The Sony Fx30 is probably the most surprising camera that I've ever used. In today's video, I want to share with you why and also give you my honest thoughts on owning this camera for a year. I'll talk about where I think this camera excels and what I think some of its weaknesses are. My hope is that at the end of this video, whether you're considering purchasing this camera or you're just looking to get the most out of it, that you'll be able to walk away with a better sense of how to leverage its strengths and also minimize its weaknesses. Plus, it's just fun to talk about cameras. All right, let's get into it. For those of you that are new around here, my name is Riley and I'm a filmmaker who's produced documentaries on multiple continents around the world using the gear that I talk about on this channel. So if you're someone that's into documentaries or making films with small crews, then you're in the right place. Consider subscribing and following along. All right, back to the video. This camera really has exceeded my expectations. When I purchased it, I really only considered it a B camera. It is, after all, about half the price of its big brother, the Fx3, but after having used it for a year, I really do think that it's worthy of being considered an A camera, so long as you don't try to use it like an Fx3, and that is at ISO 12800. The image quality is just flat out excellent. And I think a lot of this comes from the fact that it's in Sony's FX lineup and is going to share a lot of the same processing pipeline and color science as the Sony Venice. As a reference point, I think the FX30 is definitely better than the FS5 and even the FS7. And I know that these are older cameras, but they're pretty widely used in the industry and offer a decent point of reference. If you want to get the most out of your FX30, I would strongly recommend shooting in S-Log3. There are some other decent picture profiles that are available on the camera, including Sony's S-Cinetone, but S-Log3 is going to give you the most dynamic range, and as well, it's going to give you the most flexibility in post. So you're going to be able to manipulate your contrast and your curves and push and pull your colors as needed when you're working with a very flat and easy to color grade S-Log3. Now, speaking of getting the most out of the Fx30, I do want to take a brief moment to announce and shamelessly plug a new course that I'm launching for the Fx30. In early 2024, I'm going to be launching an Fx30 course called Getting the Most Out of Your Fx30. It's going to have over an hour of content that's designed to help you maximize the image quality, set it up for run and gun filmmaking, and also utilize the audio top handle to its maximum potential. My promise to you is that by the end of the course, you're going to feel more comfortable using this camera in fast-paced run and gun environments, and you'll be able to get the absolute best image quality possible. I'm pricing the course for under $40 so that it's affordable, and you can find the link to it in the description below. This course is something that I am super excited to be working on because, first and foremost, I think it's going to provide a lot of value to a lot of people. The Fx30 is a camera that I love, and I think that it's going to help a lot of people tell some really cool stories. So I'm super excited to be helping people get the most out of this amazing little camera. And as well, this is my first digital product that I'm going to be releasing, and it is a way to help me support this channel and monetize it, and as well be able to create more content for you guys. So like I said, the course is going to launch sometime around January of 2024, and the link to the description below is going to take you to that course as soon as it goes live. All right, let's get back to the video. So here are some of my major takeaways after using this camera for a year. Let's start with some of the strengths. For me, the body style is easily the biggest strength of the Fx30, and I think that it solves a lot of problems that I used to have when working with small cameras like this one. I think it honestly, for most people, mitigates the need for something larger like an FX6 or an FX9, unless the built-in variable ND filter is critical for you, or you need some of the more pro IO like SDI and Genlock. The camera's top handle with the XLR inputs, the zoom rocker that's right on the body, and the compact design and mounting points means that it's going to give you a lot of the flexibility of like a DSLR or mirrorless style body, but it's also not going to require a lot of third-party accessories to get it up and running. If you remember like 5 or 10 years ago, using DSLRs and mirrorless style bodies meant that you needed like external batteries to make it run long enough. Sometimes you needed a monitor to judge critical focus, or you needed an external recorder to have something that was robust enough to be able to color grade log footage. And you don't need any of those things with the FX30. Right out of the box, you have like a fully functioning video camera that is really, really good. And if you want some of those other accessories, then you have the option and the flexibility to use them, but it's not a requirement that offsets the strengths of the camera's compact size. As well, the camera has really nice customizable buttons and a menu system that's customizable too. So this camera has a ton of really good flexibility and modularity that makes shooting with it a breeze with any style. The fact that the FX30 also supports Cine EI and anamorphic shooting modes means that shooters can grow into this camera with its feature sets. This might be a little bit of a debated topic, but for me, I think that the Super 35 size sensor is actually a positive thing. For me, I have a Red Komodo that I like to work with as well, and so having a similar size sensor means that I can share lenses back and forth between these two cameras if I use EF or PL glass, and it's going to mean that the lenses and focal lengths are going to match nicely. So for a lot of documentary shoots, I plan on using the FX30 and the Red Komodo as companion cameras together on those doc shoots. When it comes to weaknesses on this camera, I will say that there are not very many, and even some of the ones that I'm going to point out might be a little bit of kind of nitpicking. Like the audio top handle probably isn't long enough, and I think that you need a couple of like extender attachments to make it usable, but these are easy things that are pretty affordable to overcome. Now, I think the biggest weakness of this camera is just the fact that it's not an FX3 or an A7S. So it's not this amazing low light beast that can see in the dark. But honestly, this doesn't really bother me a whole lot because I think in most normal shooting scenarios, this camera is going to do just fine. I think that if you shoot at one of the base ISOs of 800 or 2500 and you give the sensor enough light, you are going to be just fine. Especially if you're filming in S-Log3, just don't underexpose the image and it's going to look really, really good. Now, the 4K 120 mode does have a little bit of a crop on the sensor, and I think that this kind of magnifies some of the noise issues that are going on, and so I think that the 4K 120 mode might have a little bit less usable dynamic range than the 4K 60 mode or the 4K 24 mode that isn't cropped in on the sensor. But again, the workaround for this is going to be the same principle. Just give the sensor enough light and don't underexpose it. One tip that I can share with you for making sure that you don't underexpose your image is to take advantage of the customized zebra options on this camera. This is something that I go a little bit further in depth on in my course that I mentioned a moment ago, but essentially the principle is that if you set your zebras to a stop or two above middle gray and you try to expose your skin tones for that range, you're not going to have issues where you're underexposing your subject and you're having to lift your shadows in post. So I think if you use zebras and you use the LUT option on the back of your monitor and you give it enough light, you're going to have an image that is really good the majority of the time. I certainly don't think that any of these weaknesses are deal breakers by any stretch of the imagination. I think that if you underexposed the same way on an FX3, you're going to be frustrated with the noise performance on that camera lifting the shadows as well. It just is going to be slightly more magnified on the FX30. And the fact that the 4K 120 mode isn't quite as good as the 4K 60 mode doesn't bother me a whole lot because getting that feature at this price point is something that is really nice to have. And as well, I think I myself and probably more people use 4K 60 more often than 4K 120. Now, if we compare the FX30 to another camera on the market, the closest option is obviously going to be the FX3. but is spending almost double on that camera body really going to be worth it for the extra low light performance? Now, I think for the people who are going to take advantage of that, it absolutely is worth it for those people because that low light performance is really nice. But I think for the majority of users, I don't know that that's necessarily worth it. And I think that it might be helpful to frame it in a slightly different way. Rather than asking whether or not the low light performance is worth it, what if you looked at it and said, what if you took the cost savings of buying the FX30 and you took that remaining money that you've saved and you've invested it into a nicer, faster lens? Or what if you took that savings and you invested it into your lighting equipment and now you have the ability to light a really nice scene when you just didn't have that option before? Or what if you took that extra cost savings and you invested it into a passion project or a spec project that will likely land you paid work in the future? I don't think that asking whether or not spending an extra, $1,500 or $2,000 on sort of like the nicer camera body is always the smartest way to go about it. I think that for the vast majority of people looking at getting into either the FX3 or the FX30 should honestly consider the FX30 because it just is such a good all-around camera, and that cost savings can definitely be used to invest into your career or into your craft in other ways. At the end of the day, the FX30 comes in at the price of a B camera or a C camera, but with the image quality of an A camera. It really is an exciting time to be a filmmaker because of this, and honestly, the barrier for entry in filmmaking is getting lower and lower as the tools get better and cheaper. And so what I think this means is that there are going to be more and more filmmakers, potentially like you out in the world, who are going to get their hands on something that is going to produce a fantastic image, and it's going to give them the confidence to tell that meaningful story that they've been wanting to tell, and they're going to have a camera that can match it in terms of image quality. So I'm super excited to see what you're going to make with cameras like this one. All right, I'll catch you guys in the next one.